It's a beautiful day to do medical meditations. It's a beautiful day to go within. Oh, won't you join me? Won't you join me in this talk about healing generational PTSD? That's the rhyme and tune of Mr. Rogers. And if you don't know who he is, well, look him up. He is originally from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, in his famous television show, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. And I've been blessed in the last 4 or 5 years to have him come into my being to help the inner child, to help heal the inner child. And one thing a lot of people don't realize about Mr. Rogers is later in life, he did get a degree in theology and ministry. And I think there was only one either program or talk where he quoted a Bible line, only one time. And he is really a symbol, somebody that I keep in my psyche about how we can be godly and goddess, how we can be religious without preaching it. We can do it through our work, we can do it through our actions, and we can do it through our energy. And so when I really reflect on the energy of his divine masculine and divine feminine, something that he had that I think was very not appreciated or understood mainstream in the show business news world. But he didn't care about that. And so he's somebody that I always keep in check of my mission. So today I'm going to be talking personally about my PTSD journey, which has been very difficult. And I feel a great responsibility in sharing that because there are a lot of tools that I do not see being offered in the church or the mental health world, the healthcare world, or the alternative world. And what's really come into this new playlist, which is called Trauma Brain Rewiring. I'm going to talk about PTSD today. In my next video, I'm going to talk about OCD. In my next video, I'm going to talk about ADHD. And in my final video, the childhood healing. And I can talk about all those categories because I had all of them pretty severely. I had them not only because of the severity of the childhood abuse that I endured in this physical life, but the severity of childhood abuse that was generational in my bloodline lineages. And so for me, there is recently come into a real full understanding of what really matters as I move forward. This is going to be a deep dive. For those of you who are struggling with PTSD, just sit back and listen. I am going to give you some specific things that you can think about doing. And I'm going to talk to you about different areas of healing that you've may never heard before. If you're somebody that is very church oriented and feels that some of this could benefit in understanding what types of programs you can bring to your church, I would love to have a private conversation about that. If you are a mental health therapist of a facility, the PTSD is really the foundation. One of the biggest things in the last year, the ADHD brain protocol really brought out a lot of information for me because my father had high end ADHD, was never diagnosed, but very, very much so. And so doing that brain protocol really brought out a lot of ancestral information that I was unaware of, and it changed my brain rewiring. It also made me realize how my communication skills and also the way I see things never fit into the mainstream. And since we are breaking down a lot of mainstream systems, we are going to need a new type of spiritual intellect and a spiritual wisdom to be able to manifest new ways of creating businesses, new ways of creating healthy, holy businesses, as well as family systems. So I want to start with the understanding of whether you've been in war or sexual abuse or severe physical abuse like I endured. We also know that this is carried down generationally. So we really, really have to get to the roots of elementary school and high school and nurturing back the respect of the physical body. If we do not understand the respect of what we call this as being a temple, and then start to ground in a new way of dating, we're going to continue to have sex in a way that is just sharing karma, demons, um, holes, trauma wounding, and then having births to rebirth that. So part of my work, whether it's an artist, performing artist, or whether it's a lecturer, or whether it's the programming, is getting to inspire adults in whatever fields to understand what new types of systems do we bring in for our children. And this really is rooted into Mr. Rogers. When you really look back at some of his lectures, he was way beyond his years, way beyond his years. So I want to start with a quote that I mentioned in my animal playlist. My animal playlist, is really trauma based. Right now, all the videos talk about how I see animals, their real life stories of healing and interpreting how they reflect back on us. If we could teach our children the value of all animals on earth and really be excited about that adventure more so than robotics, we would open up their heart chakras more. That's my belief system. So everything I'm saying today is what I've come to in my belief system. And it's something to plant a seed for you to consider. So in this video series, I'm going to get personal, but I'm going to dive into a lot of different areas that could affect the way somebody that in church can start to consider, somebody in mental health field can start to consider, somebody in alternative healing can start to consider. And I really have come to a full circle. I had this on my website probably 5 years ago, and then I changed my about page, but I work with the Holy Family. I am not of one religion at this point. I am a Christian. I am obviously, a believer of Jesus Christ, but I have a deep relationship with Mother Mary, Father Joseph, and Anna. And I want to introduce these family members in my work and how they have contributed in different lanes of my work to then help you heal your family system and to understand the value of each family member, which is very important as we move forward. So that is what I bring to the table at this moment in time. When I think about, so I want to read this quote. I've been reading a lot of books, which is really amazing. So when I had severe PTSD years ago, when I started healing, I could barely read a paragraph without a headache, like serious headache. And now I can read basically about a book a week. I'm going through a lot of different books recently, a lot of them based on different religious leaders, different people who are breaking down the church system, what they have seen in their environments in regards to demonic energies. And it's really brought me into kind of becoming a spiritual lawyer, which is very interesting because I've always loved the law. I think contracts are very important. And I'm going to introduce some ideas of contracts today that you may never have heard of before. And this is where my sort of, after going through spiritual warfare for 5, 6, 7 years, now understand my completion and things that I want to move forward with. And I'm, there were certain jobs that I walked away from, and I realize now it's because I really need to teach and I really need to work with people that understand contracts. And unfortunately, we have a lot of billionaires, multimillionaires, in the system that are doing very well financially, right? But when we look at, like I've mentioned in past videos, the data centers, that is a contract against humanity in every shape or form. And I could break that down with a leader if they wanted me to, but I think to some degree they know that the gig's up. So anybody who is really a part of that really is breaking a lot of spiritual laws on Mother Earth and doesn't really care about that. Those are not my people, but I want to empower people so we don't repeat his story. So, a lot of people say you don't really need to know anything about your ancestors. Well, I think you do. And I definitely know everything about my ancestors. I know about my sins in my past life. I've cleaned them up. I know about also what bloodlines have attacked my bloodline consistently over and over and over again. If you don't know that, you're leading your children possibly into warfare for the future. Doesn't matter how much money you have. Spiritual authority is going to take precedence eventually in this realm of Mother Earth. So with PTSD, we're not just talking about healing the physical body, it's an emotional body, a mental body, and a spiritual body, and an auric body. There's a very specific center that I would love to create that heals a lot of these things, but not only heals them quickly, upgrades the intellect of the brain and advances it. And why aren't the Billionaire Club enhancing those types of centers in each state instead of hurting humanity in each state? Be careful who you follow. Be careful who you listen to. Question everything and make sure you have a toolkit, and the toolkit can change. So many Christian mothers came to me having done a lot of things. They were not failing. They were searching. They were loving themselves. They were saying, this isn't working. I have to release my ego and say, this isn't working. I have to find something else. They are warriors to me because when I thought about it, they were willing to face pain, not run from it. They were willing to go into the pain to release it, not avoid it. They were willing to cry the pain out, shake the pain out, to become more advanced, to become more aware of their ancestral, so they don't have to repeat it with their children and hand down things. Now, I will say, I have a much more advanced toolkit right now. I could empower them much more easily and differently, knowing what I know about demonic energies at this point. But if we are either in leadership in church or leadership in mental health or leadership in alternative medicine, it is our responsibility to protect those that have been victimized, those that have been traumatized, and those that have been hurt. And we have to ask ourselves if we have the proper tools to do that. What are those tools? Well, Mr. Rogers was not a huge fan of television. He was not, social media was not really a thing back then. So he did not watch television. He did not have a radio in his car. His voice, his music was silence. Can you go 7 days in pure silence, except for work? I had to go a week without the internet, and I did a lot of reading. and I sat under a tree. It's really, I love hearing nature and birds and sounds. Um, and it was just heaven. It was absolutely heaven. So I want to read this quote because it's something that really gave me some sort of peace. What I found in a lot of my trauma coaching practice was a lot of women who were physically or sexually abused, and the memories came up later in life, which is very common. They were ready to deal with them. And they felt a lot of different emotions, and they didn't have a lot of support with their family system. This was a common theme, and it's a problem. And it's not to make family members feel guilty, but if you're going to church, or you're going to a mental health therapist, or you're going to an alternative healing clinic, I want to invite you to a message. I was reading this one pastor's journey. He had spent a lot of time, many years in Haiti, and he had battled what they call voodoo, which I don't know if it's voodoo. I thought the original voodoo practice was an actual holistic practice. Maybe it's not. Maybe it is geared towards animal and human sacrifice. I know that that's what's being practiced today, and that's what was being practiced on me last year. But with that said, he spent a lot of years there, and his conversations about that were very interesting to me. And then reading about his environment in the United States and realizing as he was starting to clear out the demons that he realized his whole congregation had demons. His best friend for 26 years, they had demons that were hidden. They were good people. And it's so interesting because it really relieved me to read about this, because I've been seeing demons in people for the last couple years. I can see them. I can see them on video too. They come out and in of people, and it's so interesting, and they can be what we label good people, but they're not good people because there's a demon in them. And when's that demon going to come out? And he had that start to experience as he became much more aggressive in his own environment and saying, I'm not going to do the regular church until these demons are out. And then his best friend was attacking him with this demon, and they were trying to kill him. And there are a lot of different demons, not just, I'm going to mention one today that has been hindering my bloodline. There are many, and you should know them all, because if you don't know your enemy, they can come back. That's why for those who are a part of my bloodline, I would highly recommend you pray and take on responsibility and hiring me in to educate you on the lineage of demons so that this never happens again. Because I did not sacrifice tons and tons of pain in all these battles for nothing. I've written it down so that it is carried on through somebody in my bloodline, if heaven forbid, if anything should happen to me. But the truth is the reason why I struggle with some of Jesus. I mean, obviously I believe in Jesus Christ, but I struggle with using his blood in some ways. But if I'm going to use it, I'm going to use it to make sure I don't sin. And if I do, I correct it immediately. And that has not been happening in the church. That has not been happening in society. And I will start in these videos to give you examples. And it's interesting because I think I have a lot of my father in me, except, and obviously I say that I had a lot of his dyslexia, ADHD, childhood trauma. But if he had healed all that, the good stuff is my father didn't need alcohol. He didn't need any type of drugs to be happy and have fun and play games and bring joy to the room. We have to get back to that type of society. Now, he was hindered by the television set, by the people around him, by his own demons that didn't bring out the purity that he really had in him. But that's why he died, to then help me reverse and clean this out. So, because the family failed to confront the trauma and the spiritual consequences of the event, a curse was perpetrated in the bloodline, granting Lucifer, which is an occult demon, because there's different layers and or the foothold. And I see it over and over again. It became very clear these Christian women were facing the reality of childhood abuse, of ancestral abuse. And I think they weren't afraid of my toolkit because once they were with me, they understood my deep love for Mother Mary in particular, but also that the water systems I worked with came from Jesus Christ, literally and religiously. And all the tools, Anna, the sacred brain protocols, they all came. And now understanding spiritual law, that comes from Father Joseph. Spiritual contracts, business contracts are spiritual contracts. And so I realized, especially in the last 6 months, I would get on these pre-interviews for these small podcast channels with men who wanted to talk about mental health. It seems to be a big issue that everyone wants to talk about, but I'm concerned, are we just talking to get likes, or are we talking to help get new programs for people? And so I've stepped back and I'm questioning whether or not I even want to go on a podcast now. Because what I found in these pre-interview conversations was, and these were not just one, this is a repetitive pattern. And so I'm giving you this information if you're a leader. If you are a leader in mental health, they'll say, my wife has PTSD, or she came from domestic violence in her first marriage, or blah, she came from childhood abuse. Then they'll say, I had sexual abuse, but they fluff it over like it's nothing. They compartmentalize it, not knowing that they have a demon in them. And I can see it in them. They're angry and it's repressed. And then I bring up, like in the last one, this gentleman, I brought up some of the healing tools because I wanted to get really specific about what are we offering to your audience? Are we offering these trauma brain programs? One of them? Are we offering the living water systems? Like, I can't talk about everything. That would be a 10-hour conversation. And as I was talking, he was talking, he told me about how his wife is severe PTSD. He wasn't asking an expert questions about how to heal her. It was just like, I need to make this video. I'll get likes. That he was disconnected from it all. He was disconnected from what God was placing in front of him, which was a trauma expert, which concerned me. It was like, But what got interesting was somehow along the way of our conversation, and his aura was really, and this isn't a judgment. I mean, I send him blessings and love. It was a incredible learning tool, obviously. This has happened too many times and I can't ignore it anymore. But his auric field was very, I don't know what the word is, ghostly. See, some auric fields, you can see the disease. Some auric fields, you can see the cutoffs. Some auric fields, you can see the demons. And some, you know, I mentioned Charlie Kirk. Some videos have come up recently. He has a lot of light in his auric field, actually, compared to everyone around him. I think people who really understand that, it's like really becoming very evident to me. And I have a lot more I can say on that later. But so as I was talking to him, we got into the data centers for a moment. He works for the data centers. He's building a data center, so to speak. And I said, well, you are concerned that you do understand that here he is doing a mental health channel. His wife is suffering from PTSD. I said, if you lived beside his data center, it would destroy your wife's health. It's destroying the animals and the people's mental health. Do you understand? And he started to fight me, which I was fine with because I know how to respond back. But he started to fight me with this male dialogue, misinformation about plastic water, misinformation about this. And he was trying to justify when one doesn't add up with the other. Men need to do trauma work, not hacking the brain. They really do. And I just said to him politely, I said, I wish you so many blessings on your channel, but I cannot be a guest on your channel. And that's how I felt because there was too much disconnect. What am I going to bring to his audience when he's so disconnected from reality of what's happening? This is very common with men. You cannot just dismiss the sexual abuse. First, you need to get the demon out, and there are different layers. Some of them you can do on your own. Some of them you can't. You need an exorcist. And you better get one that's qualified with 2 assistants, and you better sign a legal contract because this is spiritual warfare. So you have to clear spiritual contracts, which is going to be everything in the future of Mother Earth. So law will change. Physical law, you won't, we always say the judicial system is corrupted. It's corrupted because the lawyers are only working in physical law. They're not working in spiritual law, and a lot of them don't have spiritual authority. I do. Which brings me up to, I mean, I'm totally going on a totally different tangent here, but it is all connected to PTSD somehow. I'm a huge advocate of Erin Brockovich, obviously. I pray for her personally every day, and I pray for her to win as much money as possible off these data centers and to give it back to the people that they have violated. And they have violated the land and the animals. I know a lot about construction. I grew up with a construction company. My dad built. Erin Brockovich is not correct on forever chemicals. And so I'm putting that out there to her. She's not educated that not all reverse osmosis takes out forever chemicals, that we have a dysregulation in filters in America right now. And if you would like information, not only me, but a group of mothers on my team are the pioneers of facts. People need to be drinking living water, and I'm not sure why the church, it's all over in the Bible, doesn't understand that. I also want to bring to the table to Erin Brockovich. So forever chemicals, when people ask, what do? Will you stop drinking out of plastic? That's going to upset $1 billion club. But that's the truth. That club market should have never existed. So you also are misinformed, and it's okay, still love you. In America, especially from the mothers that I know in different states, in order to get a proper water, what's in your water, you have to actually pay $800 to $1,000. Most people can't afford that. They only do it if their child is really sick, and it gives you everything. It's kind of like going to a functional doctor and they give you extensive blood work. It's the same way with your water. And so if you ever want to have a detailed conversation about water filters, I would love to. I have a group of moms that kick butt, basically lecturing privately on Zoom with groups. What I want to say also is, as I pray for you, I hope you do take down these systems, because they were built immediately with improper contracts. They're breaking not just physical law, but spiritual law on Mother Earth. So I don't know, maybe the Billionaire Club doesn't have much spiritual understanding. I don't know. But what I will say is, I would love, if you go into the courtroom, I would love to be the spiritual lawyer. You don't have to pay me a cent for the families to make sure you win. And if you do win, then I would ask for a small percentage so I can build what I want to build with my own money. I'm putting it out there. One thing is for sure, moving forward, you can't just do spiritual law. You have to clean up things within family systems for it to work. So, PTSD, I would have never thought I could have this extensive conversation. I barely knew who I was in my 20s. I didn't even know I was in disassociation. It's all I knew is to be outside my body. I just know I was always looking at family events and being outside of myself because I had such severe PTSD. And there's always a situation that brings up the memories, and it varies per person. For me, the first story that brings up the memory of amnesia, because I had amnesia, was I was teaching at Broadway Dance Center. And I walked past this billboard with 1,000 flyers on it every day. And I kept seeing the same flyer, shiatsu therapy. I had no idea what that was. I took the flyer down. There was something inside of me that said, you need to do this, because I knew I had a lot of anger and I didn't know what to do with it. What do you do with your anger? Do you even know you have anger? Is your body tight? Because if your body's tight, you probably have anger. When I would work on showing how the women could use breath and different stretch and movements to release emotional pain, you would have this tight muscle, and then all of a sudden it would surrender. And then you're drinking a medical grade living water, and the tears come down, the viruses clear out, and the memories come in, which are important, because if you don't remember your own history, somebody else is going to write a new version for you. That is clear. So I go through this process. I don't even look up what shiatsu is. I barely, back then I don't even think I had a I might have had a cell phone. I don't know. Computers weren't a thing back then for me in the 90s. I didn't look it up. I was just going and going. I had a lot of guilt. Like, I shouldn't spend this money on myself. I was struggling with my mom's inner voice. But finally, when I made the appointment, I was scared to death to go. I remember knocking at the door. I mean, I didn't even know what the shiatsu man looked like, I don't think. But when I opened the door, he looked like a little angel. And I was really blessed and lucky for that. I trusted him immediately. His aura was so beautiful. And he had been a professional dancer. You know, dancer's discipline, knowing the body, boundaries. And the thing that was beautiful about shiatsu is you keep your clothes on, which I think is extremely important with people who have been abused. And it is, I mean, it is energy work. You are pressing on pressure points and energy work and memory. And he was so almost like the way I visualize Mother Mary, so loving. He was a divine masculine. I mean, he was married with kids, but divine masculine, which I haven't seen too many of them in my life, to be honest with you. And so it's like the way I teach women to touch themselves when they're bathing themselves, to say, I love you. This is the way a mother should be, which I never got at all. I got the opposite. And that's a whole programming in itself. And so their trust was built upon that. And it was a beautiful thing. But I wore this choker. You can't wear a lot of jewelry when you're a professional dancer, especially when you're on stage. You can't have any jewelry on. I bought this choker with a sun. I'm a Leo. I've been cast as the sun, you know. And one day he decided to ask me, why do you wear that? Which was a great question. Because we wear things for a reason, whether or not we're consciously aware of it or not. And I didn't have an answer. I wasn't used to people asking me personal questions. And I was so outside of myself in disassociation. I gave a very superficial answer. And he was a very much like Mr. Rogers. In fact, he had a Mr. Rogers energy about him. And he was like, huh, very loving. And I asked him, why did you ask that? And he responded, I feel like that's choking you, blocking your voice. Well, I walked home that day and the anger built. I was angry at him. That's ridiculous. Choking myself. What are you talking about? It's just a necklace. Looked in the mirror at home, took the necklace off, got dizzy. Because he had just done energy work, got really dizzy. And then I started to see the childhood abuse of my mom choking me. That began the realization, the understanding. PTSD can be very silent for people for many years. They don't even know they have it. It doesn't always show up in severe nightmares, but it can show up in chronic pain, depression, anxiety, fears, and outside of yourself. And so for me, I went through my 20s and 30s. I have some notes, very much living outside of myself. Like my mind and heart felt disconnected, and I felt like there were two rooms with a locked door between them. And I kept a distance with my true self from my family, my friends, my relationships, but nobody ever really ventured in. And you might say, well, what do you mean by that? I just recently watched Jim Breyer, which I have a playlist of him, a documentary on his tour with his father, who definitely had PTSD. And it's worth watching in the sense of what love is. It's a great example of what love does. Jim Pryor is very patient with his father, and he's trying to ask questions, and he's trying to get into a man that has protected himself. Because the truth of the matter is that's how he survived. And no, he didn't complain. And no, but he also struggled with love. He struggled with communicating love and receiving love. And that is something that I struggled with. I didn't know how to receive love because of the Jezebel, specifically the Jezebel demon in my mom, of what happened when I was 8 years old, but also the other demonic energies from my bloodline lineage and having PTSD. And so his patience and his willingness to go on that journey. I worked 8 years in a senior home as an independent contractor for dementia and Alzheimer's, and I have a lot to say about that. I did brain work. I did a medical meditation that I saw doors open up with them, and there were many enriched conversations and many mystical experiences with the seniors. And I almost didn't get my first job because of religion. So back then, I was very guarded from religion because of what how my family treated me, as if I was a problem, as if I should just forgive and everything should be fine. And that is not correct for any lane: church, mental health, alternative health. That is not correct. That is not correct protocol. But I remember I was supposed to be hired. I'm not going to go into all the story, with science for a brain meditation program that starts to reverse memory loss. And I'm a big advocate of the sacred brain programs, the PTSD brain program, which is what, if you have PTSD, which I would love to teach, the OCD brain program, which had more success statistically. Now, they might have taken that off of Google than any other protocol for OCD, the ADHD brain protocol. Like, these are amazing sacred protocols. But even if you don't have these labels, there's nothing that would hurt children from doing them to empower getting them smarter and more advanced spiritually and super consciously, so that they don't keep repeating generationally demonic or traumatized programs. But anyway, I ended up, the day before I was supposed to go in to start teaching the seniors, the religious leaders that were Christians opposed it because they had labeled it Kundalini Yoga, which it's not. It's just not in PubMed. I mean, it could be. Some of them could be, I guess, because of the psychiatrist was certified in Kundalini Yoga. So in some branches it had that. Science is science, brain activity, sound, frequency. But we sat in a room and their big thing was, I don't want them doing demonic things, which I totally understand. But now I have issues with what churches were not doing correctly. But at the same time, they were like, why can't they chant Jesus Christ, Jesus Christ? And my thing was, I'm staying neutral because I'm here to help them reverse memory loss and find what belief they want to find and believe. Now, I can honestly say within an 18-year trauma practice, staying neutral, like Mr. Rogers, most people did find Jesus and God in my work. So they were very judgmental of me, and they didn't do the class. So the head nurse and other people did the 30-minute class, which was breath work. And, church will say breath work is demonic. No, the 200 faked yogas in the last 20 years from male predators is demonic and should have never been legalized in America. I've spoken about that for many years. Yes, but breath work, the breath work I taught, helped people reverse medications from asthma to allergies to head pain. Breath work is essential to optimizing your brain, your blood flow. We breathe, we're human beings. Now, is there demonic and very abusive breath teachers online? Yes, but there's also very sacred breath work online. But once again, my seniors in 8 years hardly ever got the flu. That's just a fact. This was before COVID. I left during COVID because I would not wear a mask because I had PTSD. So I was discriminated and I lost my job that I loved, by the way, and I was good at, and I showed results. I could do a whole documentary on those 8 years with seniors with dementia and Alzheimer's. The breath work, the meditation work was keeping them at bay and advancing them, and their children knew it. And my bosses knew it. With that said, I might have gone a little bit further with the religious people to try to incorporate with them. Why are you feeding them processed food? Why are you feeding them dead water or water with parasites and forever chemicals? Why are you not putting this money into this? I would love to come into your church and offer you that education. So, I ended up thinking I wasn't going to get the job. And then it went up to higher corporation, and somebody in higher corporation knew of the medical meditations and said, I disagree. And then I was allowed. And I'm grateful because it taught me a lot about what works. That's lived experience in a room full of seniors with Alzheimer's and dementia. And it's a shame we've spent so much money on pills instead of advancing the brain work for them. And some of it is sound frequency. Some of the chants does awaken them. It's like singing class. You want to turn the TV news off, and you do want to put music on, especially specific types of music that they enjoyed, like big band music. Those instruments really start stimulating, because the 90-year-olds were dancers. Da 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 da. It wakes them up, and their feet start to move. And what I didn't voice back then, because of my issues with religion, which I don't have now, because I am church, is I tune into the Holy Family and always have within my work. Period. And I may not agree with 100% of the church. I may not agree 100% with the alternative medicine. I may not agree with the mental health, but you got to find your organic way. You have to find it. So I felt judged early on. I went through some severely scary stuff. I was isolated, and my family didn't show up for me. That's just fact. So I don't know what family is. You show up, and you don't show up during the good times, or you don't show up for a day saying, I'm sorry you don't feel good. No, you show up. You investigate, you do fundraisers, you figure out, what does this person need? You pray. Did your church teach you? Because I think my family was judging me, talking about me. That's the Jezebel, that's the other demons. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think so. Not with some of the comments that were said to me during my father's funeral. That was a big wake-up call. You have to be responsible for your words and your psychology. I've made mistakes, but I'm rewiring and I'm healing. And I always say, I'm sorry, or I go to the Holy Family, I'm sorry about this. I will do better now. The other thing is, when you're working with people, which I really love that this one pastor in this one book was writing about this. Because so when people would do an intensive with me, whether it's 10 days, 2 weeks, a month, I'd say, whatever clothes you're wearing, you're going to get rid of. You're going to burn. You're never going to wear again, because it's carrying the energy of all that stuff you're releasing. And this particular pastor talked about that. And it's so true. Jewelry is really tricky because demonic and negative energy can attract into jewelry really easily. So you have to be really careful where you buy it from, where you're wearing it. If you got to clean it. It's like a holy cleaning. You're best to stay with gold and silver, in that sense. It's interesting with the whole physical presence. As I was cleaning up and understanding things, my father, this ADHD character I talk about in my last video, would always introduce healing tools, but then check out. And there was this other gentleman throughout the years that would do the same. See him for a moment, he'd check in, he'd introduce something, and then disappear. And this came up, and I want to bring it up. It's going to probably trigger a few people. But I think it's going to start to show you what we're really not teaching. So it's interesting. In December, I went to the mall. I'm not a mall person in general. They have revamped a lot of things to walk in the winter. I wanted to get out of the house and walk. So I was really grateful for that. And there was this new store, Cleopatra. But it was a tattoo place. Now, Cleopatra has come onto my radar, and I have found it fascinating recently. They're trying to find her burial sites and sort of the interpretation of things of her life. It's interesting because I saw this video of Candace and Charlie, and Candace asked, if you passed away, who would you want to meet? And he said, of course, Jesus Christ. But then he said, I want to meet Julius Caesar and Cleopatra, that couple. But most of online talks about Mark Antony and Cleopatra, which I think is interesting. Two very distinct things. Not much about her mother, a lot of interpretations, but what I valued about the women recently studying her is the fact that they're really bringing to light that we don't know much about her. We just know what they wanted us to know about her, but she was highly intelligent. And I love the fact that they're really pushing that marker on her, intelligence. Because media can create such an illusion of something that isn't really true. Well, I bring this tattoo thing up because this particular gentleman throughout the years that would come in and out, like my dad, I would say roughly 7 years ago, I'm in high PTSD. He's in high PTSD in a short meeting. And he said something about his tattoos and how he wanted to get rid of them for me. He wanted to get rid of them. And I didn't understand it. I'm not a tattoo person. I've never thought about tattoos, not my thing. But as I was doing all this discovery and self-development in the last couple months, I thought he was on to something about those tattoos. What he was really, I think, in my interpretation saying is I have to release the contracts of these tattoos. Whether I get them removed or not. When somebody gets a tattoo, this is God's work, the human body. We call it the temple. If you have birthmarks, they're there for a reason. That's what makes you you. But when you have somebody do a tattoo permanently on God's work, you have binded a contract with that particular artist. There are a lot of serious consequences to that. One is if that artist is a Satanist, it doesn't matter what they're drawing on your body. It could be Jesus, a cross, or angel. They could be imprinting a bind with Satan. If that artist is severely traumatized, trauma bond. Either way, you have contracts if you have tattoos on your body. Do you know the person inside and out that did your tattoo? And I'm sorry if you make a living with tattoos. I don't mean, but I guess it's just not something I support. I support artwork. Do paintings for people. Take that art and put it in a canvas, put it in a book cover, and sell it. But there are serious consequences when you bind something to somebody else's body. So that man, when he brought that up, which he would bring up things like my dad that nobody else would bring up, so you don't forget them, was onto something. Now, whether he removes those tattoos, he has to release the contracts. And actually, the tattoos that he has are generational, because I know two of the tattoos, I remember them. They're generational issues that have to be cleaned out contractually. Why is the church not addressing this? Why is healers, practitioners, mental health therapists not addressing this? You can still get a tattoo, but you better know the history and bloodline of the artist and make sure that they are clean. That's a lot. Like, you don't even know that with your mental health therapist or pastor. So I'm just being clear. I remember 5 years ago being in these groups with the health food product company I was a part of that went south. And there was a young woman that I didn't know much about. She was selling a lot of product, but she had all these tattoos on her body. And I thought she was a very beautiful soul. But the tattoo on her chest, I was like, that's demonic. Like, that is not adding up to who this woman is. And I was bringing up, this was sort of a private meeting from the group, something about protecting victims and trauma, not knowing that she had sold her soul, her body for money, and not knowing that she was being taken advantage of, in my opinion, from this group in this company that didn't understand sexual binding. They didn't understand any of this stuff, and they threw me out. They didn't respect me as a trauma coach. All I know is after that meeting, she took 6 weeks off. And I hope that I started to implant holiness into her by just voicing what I voiced. This is just one example. You think it's not a big deal, but we've lost the touch of what the human body means because we haven't healed generational traumas. There needs to be a trauma center. The Billionaire Club, if they had cared, would have met with people like me in the table to have trauma centers in each state instead of data centers that's taking away humanity, taking away animal life, destroying humanity right now. Spiritual violations. Somebody could have PTSD just by the tattoo on them from the binding of the person who put the tattoo on them. When my father died, spiritual awakening, he told me I had a lot of generational bloodline trauma to heal. And he started to guide me. And as I started to heal it by doing what I call the PTSD brain protocol, along with the other brain protocols that will be a part of this playlist, I started seeing visuals of Black women chained, tortured, silenced. And I started to shake it out of my body, which started to restructure my whole body. It's taken a lot of time. Now, I was a professional dancer, extremely talented world record holder. Everything is realigning. Everything is realigning. And I'm just now towards the end of it. I had one more ancestor that's not, I don't know her. I know of her son who I feel betrayed me. I would call him a Judas. But his grandmother, I know her story. And it would benefit him to know her story to help start cleaning up his children and hopefully grandchildren in the future. Because if you don't know, you may repeat. And he's already repeated a lot of stuff karmically. There is a easier, healthier, holier way to help heal PTSD and generational traumas. And a corporation of a lot of sciences that within 3 or 4 months, people would be really, really in a better place. That blueprint would be beneficial to start. All I can do is put it out there. So I started to do childhood trauma, dyslexia, ADHD, but I always went back to 2 of the breath patterns in the PTSD brain protocol. Because what happens is when you're pulling trauma out, that pain level, you get very, very rigidy, antsy. That's, I want to run. I want to be outside myself. Give me some alcohol, sugar, trauma. Oh my, what am I going to do with this? And then you retrain your breath patterns to be resilient. Because trauma can hide when you don't understand and master the breath. Demons can too. Demons love dead water. And they disrespect the divine feminine. And that's in everybody. Everybody has a divine feminine in them. The divine mother. Not just the divine father. For me personally, with the mothers, I had to become my own mother, the mother that I needed for myself, that what I needed. And I felt Mother Mary with me. I would call her in. She's been with me in the last 6 months, helping me heal. It's a tingly, beautiful, loving sensation. It's what you start to feel, that love that you can't feel when you have so much trauma and PTSD. That's what Jim Breyer was trying to do with his father, hugging him, kissing him, loving him, and knowing there was a block there, but continuing it consistently. It's admirable. It's rare. And towards the end, it sounds like his dad was able to say, I love you, which is a really, really big deal. And mean it. Because there's so much there. I don't say I love you throughout the years to many people. I never said it except to one man in my life. Dating, because I don't think it's like, I don't think you should say those words if you don't really know what they mean and mean them. Love to me shows action. You need to see action. So in essence, this man, I didn't show action yet. right? Um, so alongside the brain rewiring of the PTSD brain protocol, I used float therapy, but not in the mainstream sense. I developed a method of breath and movement inside the water. I would actually redesign the float tanks extensively, and I would redesign the education and have float therapists. And there's a lot of beautiful things that could happen that I think the church would support if I do. But with that said, water allows the body to shake without pain, or at least very little. It becomes a safe container for release, but you have a lot of acidity when you're shaking out, and that's where a medical grade water comes in to release all that acidity so it doesn't build into cancers. So we don't want to be drinking dead water. We want to be drinking living water, and we want to define what that really is. Unfortunately, water is really complicated right now in America. So it's a combination of brain rewiring, water therapy, breath movement. It can even be a combination of prayer and specific casting out of demons. Yeah, there can be a whole thing with that I've been using recently, and it feels really whole to me, wholly. Because the thing about PTSD, even though a lot of people throughout the years have complimented me on my light and my kindness and all that, I mean, I've had severe rage and anger. I mean, you see the tap dancing video on my YouTube channel. I mean, you have to when you've gone through as much as I have. And demons demons feed on trauma. Demons feed on trauma. So when people have PTSD from war, we have to isolate them and get them healed so that they don't continue to be re-traumatized by demons, by trauma bonding. So there's a responsibility once we define that. We need to get them offline. We need to get them off, these things. And I don't care how much the Billionaire Club loves the robots. There's nothing like having the experience of Jesus Christ healing, or Mother Mary healing, or Archangel Michael healing, or Father Joseph healing. Nothing. It's heaven here. And we need a lot more of it. So I healed my PTSD generationally. The physical part, the mental part, the emotional part, the spiritual part is what I'm finishing up. I had spiritual PTSD from what happened to me in the last couple of years. I will say I've become emotionally intelligent in a way that I didn't think was possible. I don't know if anybody else understands me, but I definitely understand me. I have become spiritually intelligent that feels very ancient. And I think I've become neurologically intelligent in a way that can help others. I did watch Christian mothers specifically come into my practice with rage and leave in their goddess state. I watched clients in the medical field open doors to childhood trauma they had never been able to access. And I watched people reclaim their voices, their bodies, their identities, and their souls. And I mirrored that transformation in my own life. And it is a lifestyle change because there's so many obstacles of toxic environments, And there's a lot of people with walking around with demonic energies inside of them because of the lack of education, I feel. And I just mentioned specifically one category today with tattoos. If you have a tattoo, you can still love it, but I would definitely do some sort of contractual clearing the binding of the artist who created it on you. So I want to finish by saying this, and I have some notes I'm going to finish with. From being almost choked as a child to carrying ancestral bloodline trauma, I took the road less traveled. Through discipline, faith, and trauma, brain rewiring, I healed PTSD completely. I am here to teach these systems at a time when humanity needs deeper, more intelligent healing. If you are a clinician, educator, healthcare leader, or organization seeking trauma solutions, or even a church that go beyond traditional methods, I'm available to lecture and teach these systems at your next event, retreat, and employee training. I mentioned Jim Breyer, so I'm gonna finish up with a story. I'm a storyteller. Oh, I'm gonna finish up with two stories. So I went to see Jim Breyer a couple months ago. And when I was driving, it was about 45 minutes away. It was an area that I used to drive when I was 17 years old, when I was doing one of my first real professional performing jobs, which was Kennywood Park, which back in the 1989 area, it was a big job for people at Point Park University and Carnegie Mellon. It was doing 5 shows a day. You had the mic with the cord, you had to sing and dance. And I worked with some really talented people that went on to do a lot of great things on Broadway. And I remember getting the job. My father, I think he went down to Duquesne University with me when I auditioned, and it was a big job. It was a great paying job, to be honest with you. And I got my first professional choreographic job from that with another theme park. And I would have to drive past this particular area, Homestead, 45 minutes there, 45 minutes back every day. And, blue collar, it's what you do, it's a good thing. So I went to see a show, and it's in an old theater that has a library. And the area is pretty abandoned. It's lacking life. But I went into the library and I was just like, this is ancient. It was really cool. And I was like, oh, please, let's just not get rid of our libraries. Our libraries that have ancient energy. And the way this building's designed, because I'm a builder, I was just like, it's like a little piece of gold in an area that needs new life to it, in my view. And I thoroughly enjoyed watching Jim Breyer. It was awesome. I was in the last seat. I love to be in the balcony in general. I think from my directing choreography days of looking down and viewing, but I had a notebook and I was writing, and it was just, I needed to get out of the house. And I ended up talking to this 80-year-old man who ushers in all the theaters. And he said, "You're sitting in my wife's seat." I said, "Huh?" He said, "We're putting a plaque in. She passed away and I own these seats and they're in her name now." And I said, "Huh, interesting." And he said, "Yeah, it's like we love the theater, we love to usher." And I think he was an engineer, and we started talking about his wife. And I just thought, what a beautiful sort of, like, I'm sitting in her seat, her energy, her love for theater, her love for volunteering, her love for ushering, her love for, and we just talked a lot. We had a great conversation, and he was intrigued because I was just writing, and I'm like, well, I'm a writer, I'm an artist, I'm a performer, and I was telling him about the work I used to do in Civic Light Opera. So that kind of initiated like the beginnings, going back to 17 years old, and I kind of took it like that way. And then recently, a couple weeks ago, I was itching to get out, and there was a film pitch, film community, and you could pitch for 60 minutes, 60 seconds, what you do and stuff. And I asked my team, and they said no, you don't have to go. Like, this isn't going to open the door. And I got that. I totally get that they have specific ways of working God, and I'm not in control of that. But I was like, I just really want to go, even though, I just want to go. And so I ended up driving down to a different neighborhood in Pittsburgh. It'd been a long time. I used to be in the city all the time back in the day. And I wanted to see two friends. That's what was my initial. Two friends that I performed with years ago that now have leadership roles in different areas of Pittsburgh. And I haven't presented myself to them yet fully. I was been waiting for the green light from my spiritual team and my healing, because I know that I have to surrender to them. They have a process, and that's, when you're a control freak, that's hard to do, but I totally understand it now. I'm not in control of my next job. They're bringing it to me. It may be in India. So, but I wanted to see these two people because they're great people and they're in great positions, and they're perfect positions for them. So I wanted to just kind of say, hey, how you doing? They weren't there. So I walk into the room, signed up. I'm in a divine feminine energy, even in the way I'm dressed. Almost everybody's dressed in black. Not everybody, but a lot. I would say 70%. And the energy in the room is really dark. I could feel some demonic energies, and I could pick them out right away. The murder energy ball, I could Jezebel. I was like, it was almost like, whoa. And I literally had to walk outside again and say, do I want to do this 60-second pitch? Do I want to do this? And I brought in my protective team to protect my auric field and all of that, because there was some heavy dark energies. Like I said, Christians have demonic energies. So this isn't a judgment. This is a wake up. Okay. And so I went back in, and I ended up sitting beside this older black man who was in a white outfit, good energy, kind of felt a little like Jimmy Slide. He ended up giving me his card, and he did work in August Wilson, which I love August Wilson. So that was cool. Like, I felt like I was in my little, like, mom, like, I'm protected here. And the pitches were happening. The guy running the show, great energy. A lot of the pitches didn't make sense to me because they were just kind of basically saying, hey, I paint sets and you can locate me at, or hey, I had taken a pitching class, and I always like to do things outside the box anyway. I always like that brick system. So I thought, oh, this is going to be interesting, because I know that they told me nothing's going to come of this. That's what they said. So I can do anything. It's a playground, and I haven't been on a stage in a long time. And I was like itching to get out of the house, and they're like, it's not time, but we'll let you do this. That's what it's not time yet, but we'll let you do this. So I ended up getting up because they called my name. And when I grabbed the mic, I felt the activation. And basically what I did for myself when I got home is I activated myself. I didn't need somebody else to activate me. The way Jimmy Slide activated me by calling me up on that tap dancing stage, and then me coming back each month and tapping with him and the guys. I grabbed that mic and I started to sing. And the room for each pitch was very, very noisy. Very noisy. People were not listening, not talking. I sang a couple notes and it was quiet. the whole room. And I heard my ancestors and I was like, and then I gave my pitch, which was a documentary pitch. And I got down and I was like, wow, that was easy. Like, I knew that they were not the people that were going to give me the money or like, but it was an activation for me. And then I ended up leaving. And as I'm walking to my car, this man with his daughter pulls down. He said, look, because I talked about being a healer in that 60-second pitch, blah, blah, blah. It was about the water stuff. And he said, thank you so much. I feel like I had a healing with you. What a blessing. And he's like overweight guy. He's like, I'm here with my daughter because she wants to get into filmmaking. And he was just like, and I was like, what? With that? If you could only imagine if I did some of what I really do, I was like shocked. I was like, what? And then I went home and I talked to my ancestor on the side. I got a lot of feedback and download, but it was an activation. I was like, oh, I know how to do this. I know exactly what to do. And God will give me the opportunity and the time to do it, or I will build it. I will literally, because I know how to build construction, I will literally build it myself. So it all stems. So it all is interconnected. It's all interconnected. And I will say this, it wasn't me on that stage that stopped the crowd. I have said this, I am working with the women that I've healed. They came through, but I did not expect the whole, it was a large group of people and it was very busy and very loud and nobody was quiet for any of the talks. At least 50 people had gone before me. And then it was like within 5 seconds of singing. And I was like, oh, well, if you can quiet a room to pay attention to you in Pittsburgh, then you can do it anywhere. When they say that about New York, if you can make it in New York, I think that's in Pittsburgh because Pittsburgh is a hard crowd. So I took that as like, wow, I didn't think that was possible. I was like, good job, ancestors. Good job. And so I'll leave you with that. That's the healing of my PTSD, by the way. Oh, Jezebel, which my mom has, the demon Jezebel. A lot of people have in this city of Pittsburgh. There's certain demons that operate in certain districts. And it gets to be more detailed. The Jezebel targets prophets of God and desires to silence them by killing them. That's deep because all the women, it was very much chokings, chains, cutting the tongue. We are silencing you in any way, shape, or form we can. And so for me to initially go up there and break, like I felt like I needed to do that, even though I knew that it wasn't the people there. God bless them, love them, but they don't have the toolkit or the financial toolkit to do what I need to do. But I still, like I did everything. Like I went outside, protected myself. I could feel the demons. I could initiate who they were in the room, clear myself, protect myself, and just do what I needed to do to activate. And you start to work with that as well. So anyway, but the Jezebel and deals with rape and sexual abuse. So I'll go further down the road in ways that you can specifically do specific prayers to start to break that or start to set the intentions of clearing that, as well as if you're working with somebody also with that. So that's all I'm going to share today. Thank you. This was a long video. I didn't know my PTSD was generational until my body told me. I'd love to get feedback from you. It doesn't necessarily have to be in the comments. It could be through email, to make it more organic and more personal. So, and I can't really, I'm learning, I don't really want to respond through comments. I would rather respond through it being that personal. I think it's important. So, thank you so much. If you want to hire me in, youmatter108@gmail.com. We can set up a Zoom consultation of what that would consist of and what you're interested in, what type of programming. And that's it. Many blessings.